Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Texans' defense was simply too much for Old Man Rodgers and the Steelers. Also, what's next for Baltimore and John Harbaugh? And the Jaguars weren't a one-year wonder. They're for real. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
It was a bitter end to the season after Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers were stymied by Houston's suffocating defense. Locked On Texans host John Hickman reacted to Houston's dominant performance in Pittsburgh and looked ahead to the rest of the playoffs.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Guys, coming into this game, the pregame, it was the Steelers will win this game 24-17. People had the Steelers scoring 20 points. And I think maybe they saw that last performance from the Houston Texans defense versus the coach and Riley Leonard and thought maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers could sneak one up. Okay, well, 6 points scored in the entire game, right? The Pittsburgh Steelers were shut out in the second half. Okay, that's number one. All right, number two, what have we talked about? They have a hard time creating separation over there in Pittsburgh. Them receivers ain't about nothing for real. No disrespect to them personally. I'm talking about what they do on the football field. And people were expecting those receivers to play a major role in taking down this Texans defense. Did they not remember Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley play on the same team? Okay, well, if they did, they were reminded Monday night. Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter combined for, and this is per PFF, 5 targets, -2 yards. Okay, all right. The Houston Texans defense held the Pittsburgh Steelers to under 200 total yards. Okay, the Houston Texans defense held and contained the Pittsburgh Steelers passing offense to 2.9 yards per pass, 3.5 yards per carry, 0-2 in the red zone, 2 turnovers, 4 sacks, 2 scores, by the way. And shout out to Sheldon Rankins. This ain't no new year, new me where, y'all want big boys to get in shape. We can be big and still be athletic. And twice this year, Sheldon Rankins has shown y'all he get his hands on the ball. He going the other way. Shout out to Sheldon Rankins. Shout out to Will Anderson on that play, who was just a man possessed. So 2 scores, 8 tackles for loss, 4 pass deflections, 7 times against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Houston Texans defense held that offense to 6 or fewer plays. Guys, this is historic. This is historic. And they were challenged early in the game, right? The turnovers and the fumbles and everything that happened early in the game. There were some times where the Houston Texans defense were put in a compromising spot, and they were able to fend off the Pittsburgh Steelers. They didn't result. None of those drives resulted in a TD. If I look at what happened after the Houston Texans offense turned the ball over, I'm looking at that first fumble where the Pittsburgh Steelers were actually in some very good field position. They came away with nothing. They punted the ball. The second fumble, they came away with 3 points, only resulted in a field goal. The third turnover, the interception, that resulted in the punt. So it wasn't easy for the Texans defense. The offense did an amazing job if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, but they did a poor job and pissed you off if you're a Texans fan. They made it hard on this Texans defense. They absolutely did. But who came to play for Houston? After that first drive where we saw DK get an explosive play for the Steelers, right? What happened? No more explosive plays from DK. DK Metcalf held to 2 catches, 42 yards. He had the 25-yarder. After that, nothing. That's on 5 targets. None of those guys, and we talked about Kenneth Gainwell throughout the week. He had 26 yards 4 catches for 26 yards. But none of those players from an offensive standpoint had any impact on the game. So you're looking at an offense that, in my opinion, came into the game handicapped. You're finally getting DK back after a couple of games. He was out due to suspension. Okay, in moments like those, you typically will look for another player to step up. And the Houston Texans offense know all about that. When we didn't see Nico Collins, who stepped up, Dalton Schultz, Jaden Higgins had a moment or two throughout this season. Nobody has stepped up for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense coming into this season with no DK. And that wasn't going to change against Houston, considering their defensive backfield looks like Kamari Lassiter, Derek Stingley, Caleb Bullock, and Jalen Petrie. And I got to give some love to Jalen Petrie. Again, I don't know how the hell he's not an all-pro player. I really don't. And I think there's a strong case to be made for Caleb Bullock in his second year. Is the name there for both of those players? Maybe not. They may not be household names. Those are two players that were drafted later in the draft, second round for Petrie, third or fourth round for Bullock. And I understand that, but then I kind of don't, because if you put on the tape, it ain't a lot of players playing better than them.
Stay up to date all year on the Houston Texans by subscribing to Locked On Texans on your favorite podcast app. You're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, what's next for the Ravens after moving on from John Harbaugh? Before we get to that, Keontae George is blossoming into a star for the Jazz. The wild card round has now come and gone, and FanDuel is full-on playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. Every play feels bigger, and the boost makes your bet feel that way too. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your Profit Boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Keontae George dropped 32 points in a Jazz road win over the Cavs.
Danny Cunningham here at Rocket Arena after the Cavs fall to the Utah Jazz 123-112 on Monday night. Let's talk about this one for 94 feet. And the Cavs had a candidate on Saturday for their best win of the season when they beat the Minnesota Timberwolves. And on Monday, they turned around and now they have another candidate for their worst loss of the season. This was a game where I think it looks like the Cavs overlooked Utah. Utah on Saturday lost by 55 points to the Charlotte Hornets. And they came out on Monday and they looked like the hungrier team. They looked like the more forceful team. They did all the little things well, and it didn't help that the Cavs couldn't shoot the basketball for the early portions of this game. They fell behind 21-4, I believe it was. Early on in this game, they did fight back. They had a great second quarter, outscored Utah 40-20 in that quarter. They led by 8 at halftime, and then in the third quarter, Utah scored on, I believe, its first 8 possessions of the quarter, and they just took the game right back and then never looked back. And I thought, saw the Cavs take some steps forward, but it seems like every time it looks like this team is starting to turn the corner, they run into a wall. And that wall on Monday night was the Utah Jazz. Now they've got 2 really big games coming up against the Philadelphia 76ers, both of them in Philly Wednesday and Friday, and I will talk to you guys after those.
Celtics were half a game out of second place in the East before they lost to the lifeless Pacers. Oh, no.
Pacers win 3 in a row. Tony Easter with Locked On Pacers walking out of Gainbridge Fieldhouse for the Pacers thanks to a Pascal Siakam spinning floater with about 6 seconds to go. Beat the Celtics 98-96. First win for the Pacers with under 100 points in a game since 2022, but their defense was solid. That was a big part of them getting this win. Having the Celtics limited without Jaylen Brown from 3 was a big part of that, and the Pacers defended and were connected for the 3rd game in a row. They're playing a lot better, and Siakam, of course, was brilliant late in this game, but good play from the Pacers centers, particularly Jay Huff on offense, who had 20 points. They all defended at least pretty well in this game, and the Pacers have a little bit of momentum. Their ball movement, their player movement, very crisp of late. The vibe's obviously much better when wins start happening. Pacers now not in last place in the NBA in record, as they've got the Raptors and Pelicans in here as they look to keep winning. We'll have much more on Locked On Pacers.
Tyrese Maxey just keeps on keeping on. Carried the Sixers past the Raptors.
If there is such thing as a feel-good blowout, we saw that tonight in Toronto. The Raptors lose to the Sixers on the second night of the back-to-back after pulling out a thriller on Sunday. They split the pair with the Sixers. And really the big takeaway from this one is okay, who cares? The Toronto Raptors finished the first half of their schedule at 24-17, way ahead of where anyone thought they'd be coming into the season, on a 48-win pace with a top 5 defense, which in the first half of this game seemed like it was very much at risk of falling all the way down to, number 25, 30, because the Sixers had themselves one of the craziest shooting halves you will ever see. At one point in this game, in the second quarter, they had a true shooting percentage better than 100% into the second quarter. That's how ridiculous the shooting variance was in this game. When VJ Edgecombe is hitting consecutive contested pull-up threes on your dome, it's just not your night. And this game was very much saved vibes-wise, as late in the game, after chants of "We want Lowry" rang out throughout Scotiabank Arena, Kyle Lowry, likely in his final game in Toronto, the greatest Raptor of all time, checked in for a couple minutes to a massive standing ovation. He missed 3 threes as he tried to get one to go down to make the crowd pop even more. Couldn't get that to happen, but still very cool stuff to see a Raptors legend in probably his final game in the city he won a championship in get that moment in front of the crowd. Very cool stuff. And the Raptors, you lose the game. You got the really good split though against the Sixers with that fun win on Sunday, and they move forward with a 24-17 record halfway through the season.
And in the NHL, the Canes rallied late against the Red Wings.
Sergei Fedorov's number 91 is forever enshrined in Hockeytown, going up to the rafters, never to be worn again. It was a fantastic night from start to finish. Obviously, great speeches from Sergei Fedorov himself, Steve Yzerman, Ken Daniels, Mickey Redmond, touching tributes, and just one heck of a show the Detroit Red Wings put on for Sergei Fedorov as his number is retired. And then the Red Wings go out there and, well, they get up to a 3-0 lead against the Carolina Hurricanes, the East leading Carolina Hurricanes, the team that Fedorov signed that offer sheet against or with all those years ago. And it looked like the Red Wings were going to cruise to a victory in a game that they probably were being outplayed in, right? Gibson was playing fantastic as per usual. Goals from DeBrincat, James Van Riemsdyk, Albert Johansson, his first of the year. But then the third period got crazy. Detroit just turned into a shell. Carolina became the possession monster that we've seen and know throughout the season. And they battled back, and shorthanded goal and abysmal penalty called, 3-3 going to overtime. But then that abysmal penalty called came back the Detroit Red Wings way as Andrew Kopp cross-checks his way into an OT winner. So Red Wings now tie the Carolina Hurricanes atop the Eastern Conference to cap off a wonderful retirement night for Sergei Fedorov.
The Baltimore Ravens fired head coach John Harbaugh, and then he became the belle of the ball in the offseason coaching cycle. Everyone wants a piece of John Harbaugh. So who knows John Harbaugh better than anybody on our network? Kevin Ostreicher from Locked On Ravens joins me now. And Kevin, I want to talk to you about the Ravens coaching cycle because they have been, at least by the national media standards, pretty quiet about what's going on there. Everyone wants to talk about the other Harbaugh brother, although both of them are potentially on their way to Cancun here shortly. But Kevin, when you look around at the openings available, is there, to your mind, a match of need and what Harbaugh brings that you think makes the most sense here?
Yeah, I honestly think the Giants make a lot of sense. I know a lot of people are connecting him to Miami, especially with the new GM being in there, and maybe there can be a working relationship. But it seems like Joe Shane over in New York is put on a pretty full court press to being like, yeah, I'd love, the whole possibility of all that and what's going on. We have heard rumors and reports of, what John Harbaugh's demands could be, because like you mentioned, he is the cream of the crop here when it comes to this head coaching search. Everybody wants him. So I think that, and even for me without John Harbaugh, I've been kind of saying for a year or two with this Giants team, especially after seeing, the potential that Jackson Dart has, is like, I like what the Giants have. Like, I think they have potential here with Jackson Dart. Malik Neighbors coming back off of his injury. We see a couple of other nice pieces there. Cam Scadaboo obviously coming back. Like, those are all solid pieces. And I think for this Giants team, it would be a pretty good fit. Now, there are other options. Atlanta is one to watch as well, where they do have some win now pieces. Is Michael Penix the guy? I think they'd have to kind of determine if that's the direction, because we see this a lot of the time with coaches, Peter, is a new coach will come in and there's already a younger quarterback in place. I mean, think Josh Rosen in Arizona with Cliff Kingsbury, where, it's like, oh, well, Josh, he's our guy. And then he was never the guy. So you have to kind of wonder what's the organization's vision for these younger quarterbacks versus what actually is happening. I mean, I think if you go to Miami, I highly doubt Tua plays another snap there. So maybe there's an avenue for John Harbaugh to bring in his own guy if need be at the quarterback position, depending on what happens there. But I've said for a little bit with that Giants team, like they have the chance in a couple of years to be a really strong NFC team if they can get the right coach in place, the right staff in place, and continue to bolster up some of those weak points. So that's one that I am intrigued with. But of course, there are other reports about Tennessee potentially with Cam Ward. How much does Harbaugh like him in that avenue? But if I had to pick one right now, I think that Giants one is pretty intriguing.
I want to ask you, I want to get to Baltimore too, but the idea of a CEO coach in the modern NFL, like, is this something, given all of the, I know the bit is everyone wants the hotshot play caller, and we've seen plenty of other, good coaches around the NFL, whether it's defensive, like Mike McDonald doing a hell of a job in Seattle. D'Amico Ryans has done a hell of a job in Houston as well. He was a defensive play caller, but does not call the defensive plays now. Is this, you think, a tenable model? Is John Harbaugh, who doesn't have a quote side of the ball, is this the same appeal that maybe it once was?
Probably not that it once was, but I still think it is viable. I'm okay with delegators at that position as well as they do it well. And I think for John Harbaugh, there have been questions about how well he's been doing it for the past couple of years. And so for the most part, Peter, I mean, John Harbaugh's done a really good job at, picking his staff and, outside of a couple of hires that probably didn't go his way. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gone on Locked On Ravens and said, all right, well, here's the coach of the day that's left for another promotion, because, a lot of people looked to Baltimore for those coaches to fill in on the margins. And so I think that the thing that we saw late in the year for Harbaugh, especially with like some of the weird play calls, and again, like Harbaugh's not calling the plays, but I mean, you can't tell me he's not in on those meetings, making final calls on game plan and leading those meetings. So, when Derrick Henry doesn't get the ball for 2 straight drives at the end of the Patriots game in week 16 after running all over him, where does it go? Well, yeah, Todd Monken didn't call the plays and have him in there, but at the same time, John Harbaugh's the head coach. So I'm okay with delegators and guys that don't have that specific side of the ball. And I know Giants fans are probably scarred from having a special teams guy as their coach from Joe Judge way back when, but I do think that John Harbaugh can coach somewhere and be successful, but obviously from the Baltimore perspective, it was just time for something different.
Okay, so we talked a little bit when we got the news that John Harbaugh was out, about the candidates out there. What do you think as this stands now? They haven't, they can't be in on John Harbaugh, so I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't heard as much about the Ravens search. What do you make of where the interest lies right now, and who do you think, based on what we know right now, is the most likely guy to be in there?
Yeah, a lot of names right now, and there are a lot of directions they could go. I mean, they could go with a young offensive mind play caller, young defensive minded play caller. They could go with more of a veteran on either side of the ball as well. Or they could, I've seen some people talk about Mike McCarthy. I'm not sure. I mean, people in Baltimore aren't very keen on that one, but I guess anything is on the table at this one, because Baltimore.
I don't know about that one, Jim.
Yeah, literally. I think Baltimore's up to like 14 or 15 known requested interviews, or already interviews that have happened now. I think they've had the most requests / interviews in the league at this point, and that's what they should be doing. I mean, this is their first head coach search in 18 years. They should be casting a wide net, because they don't want a guy that's going to come in for 2 years and be gone. Like, they want to make sure they get this thing right. A couple of names that are intriguing to me, a young offensive play caller like a Clint Kubiak, who is in Mike McDonald's system right now. So if Seattle steals the Ravens' young hot shot coordinator, well, maybe the Ravens do it right back to Seattle. That's one that intrigues a lot of people. Jesse Minter on the defensive side of the ball for the Chargers. He was in Baltimore for a little bit, went to Vanderbilt in Michigan, and obviously followed Jim to Los Angeles. So that's another connection. But some fans, Peter, do just want the Harbaugh connection to just be gone. Like, just start fresh, find something else. And that can be kind of hard, because John Harbaugh knows everybody and seems to have a connection with everybody. But there are a lot of other names. Like, some people want the Brian Flores or Robert Saleh, the defensive, motivation, high energy guy. And then maybe you bring in, I know the Saleh, Mike McDaniel connection, that's been getting a lot of run here with the San Francisco thing. Maybe Brian Dable comes in and calls offensive plays, or maybe Stefanski, who the Ravens did interview for the head coaching job. Maybe he does as well. I'll tell you names that people do not want. Matt Nagy, who has interviewed, Ravens fans do not want him. Cliff Kingsbury. Ravens fans do not want him. I think offensive coordinator wise, they'd be okay with Cliff, but head coach wise, not so much. But at this point, I think you're probably going to see one or two big names hired to this staff. Even, I mean, they requested an interview with Jim Schwartz, who's the Browns D coordinator, and that's an interesting one. But one or two big names will probably come in here, veteran guys who have been around, probably had head coaching experience. But like we've seen with, Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, and, you can go on and on and on with that list about these play callers. We'll probably get a couple of young coaches coming over from wherever the Ravens decide to hire from to round out that staff. They'll bring over a lot of those guys. But for now, I think there's still a long way to go before the Ravens actually find the guy they want to hire.
Stay up to date all year on the Baltimore Ravens by subscribing to Locked On Ravens on your favorite podcast app. Coming up, after a surprising year one under Liam Cohen, the Jaguars are here to stay. The Jaguars season came to a swift end at the hands of Josh Allen and the Bills, but fans in Jacksonville are still holding their heads high with excitement for 2026. Locked On Jags host Tony Wiggins says that despite losing to the Bills, there's nothing that can kill the Jags' optimism for next season.
That's the hard part for a lot of fans, that this magical ride is just suddenly over when it seemed like it was setting up for the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence to deliver. I still think from a big picture standpoint, this season meant more than it feels like this morning that it actually did. There are a lot of teams. I talked to one of the people from my network today, and they said, you know how many teams would want to be in the position that the Jaguars are in? And I said, yeah. It does not mean that just because I recognize that, though, that I don't recognize the finality of actually losing a game that the Jaguars had every opportunity to win. I'm not going to dismiss Buffalo and say that it was us not playing the best version of ourselves, even though I think that was true to a certain degree. There's a reason why you don't play up to your capabilities. And there's a reason why you fall a little bit short in situations where you normally wouldn't. And that is because there's a team on the other side that is offering some of that resistance, right? So the reason why I think it's imperative to say me versus me is we have to really look at ourselves. Any mistakes that were made yesterday by Jaguars players was made by Jaguars players. Anything that coaches did or decisions that they make that they stand by, like going for it on fourth down that Liam said is 100% a full go. Going into yesterday's game, I totally believe him that it was a 100% full go. I do think that they'll do a lot of reevaluating and saying, okay, on normal circumstances, the chart says this, but the game and the feeling of the moment tells me that. And this and that are different things, but it doesn't mean he's going to change his mind. I just think we have to start realizing that some of the same things that make people tick are the same things that will cost them when they lose games. I recall a game where Bill Belichick, the greatest NFL coach, at least the most decorated NFL coach, made a decision to go for it in his own territory and got ridiculed for it. And I think it was the year the Colts won a Super Bowl. I think that game was against the Colts. It may have been, may have not have been. But the point is he was roundly criticized for the choice that he made. Sean McVay is widely considered one of the greatest coaches in the NFL right now, along with Andy Reid. And they get second-guessed all the time. Nick Saban said when he was at Alabama and things didn't go well, people were calling in on radio shows trying to get him fired. And he's the greatest college coach of all time. It happens. It happens.
And finally, $22 million down the drain. That's how it feels in Big Blue Nation. After an offseason of chest thumping about talent and spending, the Cats have been humbled. Kentucky's 10-6, blown out by the best, and now thin. Starting point guard Jalen Lowe is done for the year, and lottery-bound Jaden Quaintance is out for this foreseeable future. Hope isn't gone just yet. There's still a portion of Big Blue Nation that still believes in a turnaround, but it's on Mark Pope's clipboard now, and if he fails, the Wildcats won't hesitate to move on. Coming up, the divisional round of the playoffs are coming up too. So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.